Hello and welcome to this countdown stream. It is unbelievable what is happening right now with this Kickstarter. It is just kind of a little bit ridiculous how high these numbers are climbing. I have a second guess in place for this to hit $42 million. I don't know if it's gonna get there. There's like 12 minutes to go, and yeah, the numbers are just kind of climbing crazy high, and we might make it, we might not make it. I honestly don't know. The thing that I did not factor in when I did my estimate last night, or yesterday afternoon, when Andrew asked me for an updated number, is I did not expect that Brandon Sanderson was going to be running ads for this, and I was just like, oh, like this is interesting, like running ads for this. Namely because I'm just like, you've already broken all the Kickstarter records, so why do you need to run ads to drive like more backers to this particular campaign? Because it's not like you actually need to do stretch goals or anything like that. I mean, usually Kickstarters have this big final push at the end if they've got like stretch goals that they're trying to run and achieve or something like that. But it's just like, no, like Sanderson's passed all of that. He's done he's well, he never had stretch goals in the first place, and he's blasted through every single record out there imaginable. So I'm just like, don't understand why you're doing ads. It has to be, I think, it has to be a test to see how many people he can really drive to this launch, like, and how many people he can get to sign up. But it's a little interesting because all of the activity right now on this Kickstarter is being completely skewed by the fact that now there are all these speculators jumping in on the action. So there are people out there. When I did my initial estimate, I thought really that it was going to be, you know, like mostly his core fans, his core readership, and like he has a massive readership, as you all know, and so like the numbers were going to be big in the first place anyway. But I had no idea whatsoever that that he was gonna attract all of these speculators, because at the moment, not at the moment, but like I think the moment he became a record-breaking Kickstarter, like I mean like The Way of Kings Leatherbound was also a record-breaking Kickstarter, but for fiction as opposed to all of Kickstarter. The moment he became the most funded Kickstarter ever, I think, is when people completely outside of fantasy readership and completely outside of his core readership and completely just, you know, not even readers in general, but speculators going like, oh, this is like a record-breaking moment, and like they're just jumping in and they're getting much higher tiers of rewards and like print copies and things like that, hoping, I think, that this will be some sort of collector's item, which it may be, right? Like, I mean, these are premium high covers that I don't think would get reproduced in the long term when he eventually publishes these through a traditional publisher. I would be really surprised if he did not end up publishing these via one of his traditional publishers, just for the print formats, like he did with Dawnshard, because it would be like there's no reason for him not to do that, because like they already have an arrangement in place to make it all happen. Like most of the interior layout has already been done, like the cover art has been commissioned. Like they would probably have to reset some of that for like a normal high cover, but I mean, there's no reason not to do it. Like the only thing that would stop that from happening would probably be the fact that traditional publishing just takes a really long time to get anything happening. Like it took pretty much a year before Dawnshard, like a normal high cover of Dawnshard was out in and available for purchase. I think it actually went up maybe the second week of February this year, which is like wild, because Dawnshard came out like ages ago and was available on ebook like yonks ago. Oh man, let's see who else is here with me. We have Hayden. Hello, Hayden. Andrew is here trying to witness what is happening with this betting page pool that is going on. Betting page, oh my goodness, I can't talk right now, guys. I've just spent like the last 45 minutes packing beta reader rewards for my kids' books, and like I've been handwriting addresses on the envelopes with like a permanent marker, and yeah, I may have sniffed some permanent marker fumes, like as a byproduct. I really need to get a different marker to write addresses next time. Or better yet, I should just get one of those like labeling machines, because I can't imagine that Dragonsteel Entertainment is like sitting in their houses hand dressing envelopes. Oh my goodness, I think I could probably afford investing $500 into like a custom like label printery thingo. Connor says, I've had people I know that don't really read fantasy mention the Kickstarter to me. That's fascinating. I bet this has become some sort of like icebreaker, in that people who know people who are readers, and not even really of fantasy, but just like readers in general. I bet people like all the office conversations, like for whoever is still back in the office or at school or whatever, people are just like, hey, like you read books, right? Like, have you heard of this Brandon Sanderson guy? I bet that is what's happening. And like there are people who have just been like, I don't really read, I've never read his books, but like he seems like a cool guy, because he is of course very personable in those videos. And like if his sense of humor is for you, then like his announcement video was hilarious. The various videos he has released since, especially like this week's troll video, OMG, like like I was in such a state when he put up that there's always another secret teaser video, and then I basically lost it yesterday when I found out what the thing was. And even though I was like, I have a book launch today, I really should not be looking at this, and I was like, no, I have like other fiddly things, like formatting thingies that I'm doing, like with trying to get the single language editions out. So yeah, I can totally sit here and listen to Brandon doing a reading of the Stormlight 5 prologue for an hour. Yeah, I could do that, even though like I normally even when he does readings of unpublished work, I never listen to them, because I'm just like, oh, I'm not an audiobook person. I can't do audiobooks. I just like, I find it really hard to keep like the words and what's happening in my mind as someone's reading it to me. I like visually reading words on the page. Connor says it has definitely gotten bigger than just the book sphere. Yeah, like the thing about Brandon is he's done writing for video games as well, and obviously he did his the last big secret project that we totally did not expect, obviously, was his free novel for Magic the Gathering. So, like, he's obviously got deep connections with the Magic the Gathering community as well. And I'm just like, yeah, this is big. Like, where is it now? I might hit refresh on this page, because like I'm just like, surely this is getting somewhere. So, right now, it is at $41.7 million. It's just crossed 185,000 backers. OMG. Okay. I wonder, like, it's 4 minutes to go. This is kind of crazy. I wonder if, like, and I don't entirely trust this counter on Kickstarter. So one thing I did realize when I was doing this is this particular counter up here, that seems to be like kind of real time. I think there's a JavaScript script powering this, but like if you scroll below, like, and you actually look at these tiers here, this lags by a good, I want to say, hour, somewhere between 1 to 3 hours is when these like more detailed splits of the different pledge levels break down. And yeah, that was annoying when I was trying to do my modeling, because I was just like, come on, like, oh, I just really want to get my data all synced up and nice, and that way, like, the estimates would be more accurate. Connor says it will only take one good movie adaptation for Brandon to become absolutely huge. Like, I am honestly shocked that whichever studio is sitting on Mistborn has not given this the green light. Like, he's been trying to get Mistborn adapted for years and years and years. He thinks that's probably going to be the easiest movie adaptation. I think he actually spent some time last year working on a treatment. I think it was only a treatment, not like a full-on screenplay. I think he just did the treatment for it, and just so he could get it to the point where he's like, I am comfortable from a creative control standpoint of like where this is going with my source material. And I think he was looking for a screenwriter to take it from the treatment to a screenplay, but I don't remember seeing a lot of movement on that in the last State of the Sanderson at the end of December. So I'm just like, surely whichever studio has been sitting on it, is just like raring at the bit to go. I don't know what would be the hold up for it. Sanderson's writing style, like the way he does these action sequences, like it's so cinematic, right? It's very like he gets criticized for his prose and his action sequences being like video gamey. But like, I don't think that's a bad thing when it comes to things like movie adaptations, gameplay adaptations, or TV series adaptations, because he does write cinematically, and all of his climax points at the Sanderlanches, like they're always these very cinematic moments and like the way he writes them is just you can totally see that as he was writing them, like he had a movie in his head that he was playing, that he was trying to just like translate into the words. So I'm just like, if anybody's writing was like pre-adapted for movies and TV series, it would be Brandon Sanderson. Granted, like he's obviously going to run into a problem, I think, with the scope of his novels. Like a lot of his novels are just, especially with all the cosmic connections, like it's a huge cast. There's a lot going on, but I mean, and I have not watched the Wheel of Time adaptation. Okay, so and I don't know if I will ever actually find the time to do that because I'm so behind with everything else. But like if you can adapt the Wheel of Time, you can adapt Stormlight Archive. And I know, like, I think he's been on record saying that what they really wanted to do for Stormlight was like an anime, like a spin, because Stormlight is just so anime. It's absolutely anime. But yeah, like I definitely think he will get an adaptation soon. Andrew says, notably, Brandon Sanderson thought this Kickstarter would be 5 million. No, it was not going to be 5 million ever. Connor, do you think this Kickstarter is warring his traditional publishers? Ooh, hold that thought. We're going to talk about it later because we are under a minute to go. So I am actually going to shut up and let's turn on the audio for Sanderson's live stream and see what he has to say.
Very riding the line for you there. Yeah.
Is there a point you think this will stop being surreal? I don't know. It is for me. I'm putting words in your mouth.
My whole life is surreal. I kind of got used to it when the Wheel of Time happened, and suddenly I was on CNN and things like that.
Surreal,
so,
yeah.
Ever since then, my life has been weird, but in the best of ways. So.
20 seconds.
All right. Here we go. 15. So we're gonna count together.
Yes.
Sorry for those who are listening.
He's lagging behind.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
Oh my goodness. That is insane. That is just insane. So here we are. Here is the final amount. It is, let's see, sorry, let me get this into the screen just right. 185,300 backers have pledged $41.7 million in total to this Kickstarter. That is just, that's amazing. That is totally amazing. That is insane. Wow. Just wow.
We're going to call the stream here because I'm going to run off to my class, and everyone's going to else is going to have food and party.
He's going to class.
Oh, there we go. And I am now this. Again, thank you so much, and we will see you next week on the stream for with Jancy. So, take care.
Nice. I don't know if I am going to dial into that stream. I am fascinated by what he's got to say with Jancy because he did co-author the Skyward Flight novellas with Jancy, and and to be clear, not that he has explicitly specified this, like he's kind of talked around it, to be honest, but I think that co-author process was more like they worked on the outline together, or like he gave her some notes about like what was happening in the background with the Skyward storyline, and then Jancy, I think, kind of went away. She picked a few characters, she plotted something, took that back to him, he reviewed it and went over the notes and kind of like got the outline to a place where he was comfortable with it. And then I think Jancy, like if you look at the prose, all the prose, I think pretty much, at least most of it, was Jancy. I would love to run a writing style analysis on this, to be honest, just to figure out what it is. Oh my goodness, no, we are not going to watch his world building lecture because JJ, like that's probably a little bit too much, I think. But yeah, like how ridiculous, guys. Oh, sorry, you don't want to. We're not doing a writing sprint. Let me flip over to the screen. So that is just some insane numbers. That's just some really, really insane numbers. Oh my gosh, sorry, I have I have not set up all my writing. Sorry, I have not set up my my streams. There we go. There we go. Oh man, this is insane. So yeah, like these are the final numbers, guys. Like I'm gonna be so curious as to whether the Words of Radiance Kickstarter is gonna be able to live up to these numbers, because we're talking some pretty big numbers here. And I just like I don't know, because the reason these numbers got this big, I think, is because this is 4 book releases in one campaign, right? And so you're not just signing up for one book release, which for Sanderson would normally be huge anyway, but you're signing up for 4 new books in like spaced out, like pretty much like it's like a normal publishing schedule for self-publishing in terms of like a book every 3 months, but like in terms of traditional publishing, this is like pretty much as rapid release as they get. And to be honest, even looking at fantasy self-publishing, I would say this is on the faster side than most people would be able to do. Like Will White puts out a fantasy novel every 6 months, and like his stuff is like his stuff is probably like top tier self-published fantasy. It's not as in depth in terms of the world building as Sanderson's stuff is, but like nobody's stuff is that in depth, to be honest. But Will White has been on record that like even though he has a team, the fastest he can do his books is one every 6 months. Like he can do a creator book like every 3 months, but he would basically kill himself and burn out massively. And he has burned out massively before trying to catch up on his creator release schedule after he was delayed trying to finish Elder Empire, which he kind of left hanging. Like he left the last book of that series hanging for I think 2 or 3 years, something like that. And yeah, he felt really bad about it. So a Sanderson level book every 3 months, like that's fast. That is really, really fast. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that he's already got the drafts all done, like he's rough drafted all of it. He's in revisions, I think, for some of them. He's already gotten beta reader feedback comments on them, probably all of them actually, because he did say that like they played a massive troll on all of the beta readers because like they knew some of them were married or like friends or lived in the same household, and they were just like, we're just gonna give them like different secret projects, and then like they'll just be like, what is going on? Connor says huge numbers. Hayden says he has class. Yeah, he has class. I think because he will be teaching, I think at the moment, I think the BYU class is running. Yeah, I'm not sure what week of the BYU class is running. But he does have class. He will be teaching. I think I'm really, really hoping that next year when he does his BYU lectures, he is gonna film and post those ones. He hasn't re-filmed and posted like the recent ones since the 2020 lectures because he's like, not that much changes in terms of my content like year to year. But I'm like, yo, next year you gotta do a new series of lectures, because I would love to see Brandon Sanderson give a lecture on this is how you do a Kickstarter, right? Like he probably didn't before because The Way of Kings Leatherbound was like kind of like the first Kickstarter that he did, and like that alone broke a lot of records because he only did that after he had built up all of the fulfillment ends and logistics and warehouse functionality in Dragon's Eel Entertainment. I mean, he's had that functionality for years and years and years, right? Like his first web store. Not that I'm actually, you know what? I do have my notes with me. I do have my notes from when I was doing like my deep dive on Sanderson and how he became Sanderson. So I do have my notes on when his first web store went up. I think it was, let's see. Oh, let's see if I can find it, because like these notes are in no discernible order whatsoever. It's just ridiculously bad. So you know what? It's not in the 7 notes. I had like 5 different sets of notes trying to work out how Sanderson became Sanderson. I think his web store went up. He had like a big redesign of his website back in, I want to say 2006, 2007, something like that. And yeah, like his first web store was a PayPal button on a page on his website, and you clicked the PayPal button and paid for it, and then you sent an email over to, I think it was still Cara. So by that time, I think Peter had been working for him as his assistant, and then Cara was on board already looking after like some of the merch end of things, and they were already doing like small print runs. Not print runs. He was not doing print runs at that time, but he was buying remaindered copies of his like first edition prints and things like that from his publishers, and they would be selling those off of his website. And like the whole vibe of the early Brandon Sanderson store is entirely it makes me laugh every time I think about it, but because like you look at the web pages, right? So like if you looked at George R.R. Martin's website at the time and Brandon Sanderson's website at the time, at like the webpage sections where it's like, you know, buy fine books, like the 2 sections of the website look exactly the same, like from like the very 90s design to the PayPal button to the like, you know, email this email address to place your order and that kind of thing. Like the main difference was like Sanderson's page was upfront about like, you know, I have got these remaindered copies and like this is how many there are, and you know, like I will sign and post them and like whatever, and this is what we've priced them at and this is why. And George's website was just like, hey guys, like I have, you know, 2 cartons of like waterlogged, water damaged books from wherever, and I'm still going to be selling these to you guys. And I'm just like, who wants a water damaged book? Like, I don't read a lot in print anymore. Like I actually read primarily ebooks these days. Like the last books that I physically bought was, is it behind me? No, it is. Oh no, it is behind me. This is the last book that I bought, and now that I'm trying to take it out of my shelf here, it's gonna collapse everything. But like, this is the last book that I bought. Okay, like, and I buy these like the kinds of books in hard copy because I like being able to study other writers' works, especially when they've annotated them in hard copy. It's just easier that way. But like for novels, like non-fiction, I mostly buy them in ebooks, and I'm just like, look, George, like, I love A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, I'm super mad that you have not finished Winds of Winter yet, but I don't want to buy a water damaged book from you. Like, I get so upset when my print books get water damaged. It is like sucky. It is extremely sucky to have a beautiful book, like just like the pages get overfilled and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know who was buying these water damaged books, but like apparently George R.R. Martin was selling a ton of them. I think he actually cleared out his entire, you know, two cartons or whatever's of his water damage books. And yeah, I just remember the Finish the Book George blog guys just like going on and on and on and ripping him to shreds for it. It was just ridiculous. Connor says Brandon Sanderson can't even stop working to celebrate. I don't like, see, the thing about Sanderson is he loves what he does, right? So and I think this is really the difference between authors who love what they do and authors who are doing something that they enjoy but like they don't love exactly. I don't know. I'm wording this terribly, by the way, because like I'm like thinking through this right now. But like, see, Sanderson writes so much and can write so much and can work nonstop because the work does not feel like work. And this is something that I have only recently begun to experience because like before in my former life, working in corporate as an accountant, it was just like, I enjoyed some of the challenges and things and I enjoyed some of the outcomes of my work, but like work itself was never like, it was never something that I loved, right? I loved the results and the achievements that my work could bring about, but I was not in love with the process itself. Like there were bits of the processes that I loved. Like I loved going out to talk to people to understand how businesses worked and how their processes worked and how they were controlling for risk. And like there were many facets of my job that I loved, but the actual nuts and bolts of the work, which consisted mostly of like documenting a lot of things in a lot of work papers and auditing spreadsheets and ticking through financial statements, going like, why are these numbers not internally consistent? Like, I did not enjoy that. I did not enjoy the politics. I did not enjoy the terrible admin that was associated with all of that. I did not enjoy the broken systems. There was a lot of stuff that I did not enjoy about my previous job. Whereas now these days with self-publishing, like I will complain on stream and in my uploads a lot about like, revision's the worst, like editing is the worst, like book formatting is the worst. Like I will complain about all of that, but I genuinely love what I do now. I have so much more fun doing what I do now than I did at my corporate job that it's really hard to mentally switch off and stop working, because it's just like, you don't feel like it's working. Like your mind just gets drawn back to the challenges that you're facing with publishing and with what you're writing, and you just like you actually want to work on those problems. Like it's stuff that you spend not even deliberately, right? Like, but I'll just be like grocery shopping and I'll see something happen and I'll be like, ooh, like that looks like it could be a fun little story for my next kid's book. And so that's kind of like where I think Sanderson is. Like he is in that sweet spot where he can do what he loves, and what he loves paid him very, very well for it. And that's how he actually can get by doing all of this stuff. Connor says he should definitely do some new lectures. Yeah. Yeah, I really hope he does. RF says B Money was amazing. Who is that Sanderson guy? Oh man, like trying to sum up the question of who is Brandon Sanderson was just like the hardest thing to do. Like it's amazing how if you talk to anybody from his fan base and you're just like, oh, this is such a Brandon thing to do, like they will immediately get it. Like they will totally know what you mean by that, because so much, like he's so authentic in how he communicates with his readers in everything from like his website, his blog posts, his YouTube videos, like his annotations, like everything. Like he's just so authentic in everything that he does. All of the communications that he writes personally, it's all in his voice, right? Like you can tell that you can tell in the sections of like, say, the state of the Sanderson, you can tell the sections that he wrote, and then like where he has delegated a section of that update to somebody else in his team, like he's very upfront about it. Like, he kind of plays that blog post like like a presentation in front of a conference room, and he'll be like, and now I'm handing to Kara to explain like what is happening with merch and that kind of stuff. And then you see the voice in the paragraphs in the section that follows, like you see the change in the voice is written by a different person. And the same for like his Twitter updates, his YouTube descriptions. Like when he does not write something, like he's upfront that he did not write it and that it is somebody else from his team. Like, and I find that so fascinating, because it's almost like the way he manages it is almost like how politicians manage it. And like some politicians who have a well-developed social media team, like you can tell, like they will always sign off their posts in like a specific way so that you can tell like which tweet or which post or whatever was actually written by them versus somebody else on their social media team who manages the account and runs most of it for them. So yeah, it's fascinating that you could talk to any Sanderson fan and just be like, oh, that was such a Brandon thing to do. Or you could like the discussions that were happening all yesterday about like after he dropped his teaser video, we were just like, what is it? And like people were coming up with all these ideas about what it could be. Like I personally thought it was like Miss Bourne getting the green light, and then right after I said that, I was like, but of course it's not going to be like that, because it's such a Brandon thing to tease you with like a promise of something, and then like whatever it is when the reveal comes, it is like 95% of the time it is not the thing that you thought it would be, and like 99% of the time the thing it ends up being, you're just like, I did not know that I wanted this more, but I actually do. Like, I thought I really wanted the thing that I thought it was going to be, but I actually want this thing that you've given to me more than I wanted the other thing. And that was exactly what happened yesterday with the Stormlight 5 prologue, because I was just like, you know what? I really, really would like a Mistborn movie. I think a Mistborn movie would be amazing. Like, But no, we got a rough draft of the Stormlight 5 prologue, and I was like, this is the thing that like I wanted, and I didn't think I was gonna get for like I don't know, like another 6 months or something. And like this is the thing that I want more right now, like compared to the Mistborn movie. Like screw the Mistborn movie. Like I don't really care if there's never a Mistborn movie. Like I would love it if there was, but like if there never is one, like I still don't care. But like yeah, Stormlight 5, I am super hyped for that, and so yeah, I am totally there for the prologue, even sitting through like an hour recording of it. And like Brandon, like he's a very good speaker, but I don't think he's like the best audiobook narrator, like which, you know, not many authors can narrate their own audiobooks, which you know, so if you're Travis Baldry, like that's awesome power to you. But yeah, like I actually sat through an hour of that. Not that I don't love listening to Brandon, but I don't love listening to audiobooks in general. And yeah, so well done, Brandon. Creative Branches says, I'm imagining his students cheering and clapping as he walks in. I wonder if they were waiting at school watching his live stream. Yeah, I totally think they would have been doing that. Honest says, imagine your lecturer walking in casually after just doing a 40 million Kickstarter for 41.7 million. Like, that is just, it is ridiculously insane. And what is ridiculously insane is that I don't even think, that those are the kinds of numbers that, like, if his whole readership got behind him and went for this, like, he moves, like, okay, so he said that he won't do this, right? He said that he won't release something like Stormlight on Kickstarter because he doesn't like cutting out the bookstores. So Stormlight and Mistborn, like, those novels are probably always going to continue going through a trad publisher. I sneakily wonder if he's going to try and yank the ebook rights away from them, because the like ebook royalties with a traditional publisher is somewhere in the ballpark of like 25%, which is it's stupid. I'm sorry, like I can't agree with that. Like because like he can get a 70% royalty on Amazon, or like yeah, he's big enough that he doesn't need to distribute on Amazon. To be honest, like. He's not going to cut Amazon out of the loop, but if he wanted to, like, Sanderson could totally launch his ebook versions on BookFunnel or something, which is much cheaper. He wouldn't even be giving away any royalties. He'd just be paying like the BookFunnel fee for doing that. But yeah, like if in the definitely not happening scenario of launching a mainline novel like Stormlight or Mistborn on Kickstarter, like Sanderson would be pulling in the same release numbers that he would normally pull in under a normal release, because like if you're 4 books deep into Stormlight Archive, you're going to buy the 5th one, which is the conclusion to the first arc, especially because it is the last book, which means it is just going to be an entire standalone of a book. So yeah, everybody's going to buy that, which means like based on the sales numbers for Rhythm of War and Oathbringer, like he'd be doing 400,000 copies, if not more, because the like for sure Rhythm of War and Oathbringer would have sold way more than 400 copies, like over like say the first year. Not that those numbers have been disclosed anywhere that I've been able to find them, so it's just like he's got a massive readership. Like you could have at least 1 million, 2 million people turning up, like in total buying through that. And like I'm pretty psyched for the Sanderson-owned retail brick-and-mortar bookstore to open, actually. He's been talking about that in the live streams that I have been able to drop in on, and I think it would be really interesting to see what happens when Sanderson starts branching out into retail. So the fascinating thing is, like, Amazon did this vertical integration the other way, right? Like, so Amazon started online, being an online e-tailer, shipping books, basically getting into the distribution game. And Amazon have branched out the other way now. So Amazon now have their own in-house imprints they look at self-published authors who are doing really well on the Kindle store, self-published, and then they go, hey, like, we notice you're selling really well. Would you like to sign up for like this kind of, I don't even know if like they're not, I don't know how close to a trad publishing business model those Amazon imprints are. Like, I think it's kind of like a little hybrid deal thing. Like, they do some things that a traditional publisher would do, but not everything. And anyway, so Amazon's moved the other way, right? Like, they started in distribution and then they have moved up into, they have moved downstream into content creation, right? Whereas Sanderson's going the other way. He started with content creation and he is going towards distribution. So I would be super psyched to see what happens when he eventually opens his bookstore. I don't know what time frame that might be, because like they are looking for a second warehouse right now, which speaks volumes, because like when you get to the point where you already have a warehouse, right, and you already have a ton of inventory in the warehouse, and you're just like, I do not have enough warehouse space, I need to open a second warehouse location or move to a bigger warehouse in Utah, which, like, I've been to Utah one time in my life and I'm just like, there is loads of space out here. Like, if any of you guys have ever seen in his newsletters, like the house that he built, like it's not a house. It's an evil underlord. It's an evil underlord, overlord, whatever his old screen name used to be. Evil lair. It's a super villain lair. Like he did this massive excavation and put in like a gigantic movie theater and everything, and game room and stuff like that. Like it's a gigantic house. So I'm just like, I feel like we're gonna get some sort of announcement later this year where they're just like, yeah, so like Karen or Kara, whichever team member it is, I've forgotten exactly who, has been all over Provo, Utah, looking for a suitable secondary location for a bigger warehouse and couldn't find any. So I'm just going to build my own. I'm just going to buy a massive plot of land and I'm just going to build my own. And then we are going to see Dragon Steel Entertainment like slowly branch out into distribution, which will be very exciting because the major player in print distribution right now from a wholesale perspective is Ingram Spark. And Ingram Spark is like, they're kind of the only option at the moment since Baker and Taylor folded. So if you want as an indie to distribute your books, you kind of don't really have another option. And so yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what Brandon Sanderson does and what he has in mind for succession planning for his business, because so much of his brand in terms of what's getting published and stuff like that, it's all tied up with him personally and the Cosmere and all of that. And he's already on record that the only person who's allowed to write in the Cosmere at the moment is Isaac, his art director. And Isaac has already done a few bits and pieces in like the Mistborn books. So if you've read Mistborn Era 2, like the Wax and Wayne books, and you've seen the broadsheets in there and like the little stories about Jack Alamanza, whatever it is, Isaac wrote those. Okay, so like he has already done a little bit of collaboration in the Cosmere, but like he's not going down the Michael Adley route of just basically like licensing out his IP and creating like the whole universe thing. Like it's very interesting because like both of them are doing the whole, you know, Marvel Cinematic Universe concept, but in books. But Sanderson is retaining like virtually all of the creative control, whereas Michael Andelay's just gone, now, you know what, like I like doing the publishing business more than I like writing books. So Michael Andelay, as far as I am aware now, I don't think he actually writes any more books. So even though he has a ton of books out, all with his name on it as like the co-author, I am highly dubious as to how much he has actually contributed in terms of prose, and in fact how much necessarily of like an individual book's outline he's contributed, because I think like the way Michael Andelay does it is like he basically acts as like the showrunner for any of his universes, and then like he has writers all writing in that shared universe, and like, you know, if they do something huge, like, you know, he's got the ultimate like yes no say on that. But I don't think Michael Andelay does a lot of his own writing anymore in the I can't pronounce it. It's like the Cathurnian Gambit, whatever. his universe, which he's got like, I don't know, 60 books out or something like that. Creative Branches asked in relation to my earlier comments about remainder books, do you mean returns? Did he buy returns from his publishers? Oh, okay. So remainders are like a really fascinating part of the book business that like I kind of want to do a video on it, but it's just like, it's the kind of video where I'm just like, there's not much interesting to say about it, but like so we got to back up and talk about traditional publishing at large, right? So like I have a whole video ranting on about like how the traditional publishing business model is broken. It was like the third last video that I uploaded, And essentially, the whole traditional publishing business it's like extremely print centric, right? Because that's where they originated way back when, before the internet, before e-readers and all that stuff. The only way you could distribute books was to print them and then like somehow ship all of these print books to readers, and that kind of is super efficient, like as I can testify to, because like I've just got a pile of packages sitting over in my living room next to me off camera, which you guys can't see. That's a very inefficient way of doing it, and that's how you ended up with wholesale distributors that distribute to retail outlets, and then retail outlets who distribute to end customers, right? Like, so you kind of have like this hub and spoke system. The problem which happens is, like, as a supplier, right, the more distant you are from the end customer, the harder it is for you to keep your finger on the pulse in terms of demand. So it is extremely difficult in publishing, for example, where publishers so it's really weird, right? Like, so even though, like, as a reader, when you read a book, when you buy a book from an author, you feel like you kind of have like a personal relationship with that author, in the sense that you're a fan of this author's work, not so much the publisher's work. Like, you'll know certain, like Tor, for example, like I know Tor as an imprint, like, because they publish authors that I like I kind of like their editorial style and direction, and so generally, like, I know I have a high likelihood of liking another Tor author if I've already liked work by existing Tor authors, right? But, like, for the most part, like, as a reader, I don't think any of us really think about the publisher or the imprint necessarily when we're looking for books to read. Like, mostly it's just like, what's the cover, what's the blurb, who is the author who wrote this book, because that can kind of mitigate reservations about the cover and the blurb, and like that's how you make your decision as a reader, right? Or off of word of mouth recommendations from other readers, which in this day and age is like, you know, Bookstagram, BookTube, Book Talk, and all that kind of jazz. But, like, yeah, so as a publisher, it's a very interesting problem to try and resolve, because you don't have that direct relationship to readers, which means you don't, like, well, you can kind of get a general sense of, like, buzz from, you know, ARCs and from reviews, and, like, just, you know, because everyone at a publishing house is usually also a reader, and, like, you hear chit chat, like, you talk about the books with your friends and stuff like that. But, like, that means, like, in the old days, especially pre-internet, right, like, it was really hard to try and figure out, like, how many copies of a book would sell. And so this whole thing, the whole title P&L, is predicated based on how accurately you can estimate the lifetime sales of a given book. And I had a very interesting conversation once with the CFO of a pretty big magazine company in Australia. And magazines, like, publishing magazines is very similar to publishing for books, like, obviously very different target audiences, but, like, the business is very similar, except magazines obviously have a much more rapid publishing cycle. But, like, said CFO of this book, what he said to me was, he was like, the ideal way that I would do my circulation numbers, because magazines and newspapers, they like to use the term circulations as opposed to copy sold, because that's kind of how they measure their sales. He's like, my circ numbers, my ideal circ number would be at every single outlet that I have a distribution arrangement with to have my, like, magazine on their shelf. Like, the ideal number of copies is the exact number of copies to be printed plus one for every single location, because that means he doesn't have any lost sales, but there is still one copy left at the stand of every single one of his retail outlets, so that any customer walking in who has never bought any of those magazines before will still see it on the shelf, and, like, it will act as, like, advertising. So, like, a similar theory kind of applies to books, right? Like, so the ideal number of books you want to print in your print run is the total number that you would ever sell in the lifetime of that book plus one to act as further advertising for every single outlet. But because you're so far removed from all of your end customers, like, predicting that, it's kind of impossible. Like, I've seen, like, experienced editors get it wrong. I've seen very inexperienced editors get it right. Like, you just kind of can't figure out, like, exactly, like, it even if you have a lot of comparable titles and stuff, it's just you're just guessing at the end of the day, which is why it's a massive gamble, right? Traditional publishing, and that's why you have so many authors not earning out their advances, because their publishers, like, no publisher ever wants to be in a position where they've undercapitalized on the print run, because, like, if a book is a breakout hit and then you don't have enough books to sell, like it is going to be a task and a half getting enough copies back to the bookstore to sell. And then that means like all those sales you would have made, like you might have lost sales because those people who wanted to buy the book might have bought something else instead, and blah 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 blah. And so yeah, so what ends up happening is a lot of these editors, they try to they round up with their guesses. So like if an editor thinks like, oh, you know, like I can't speak for the exact thought processes of an editor, right? But like what I have seen looking at the numbers from the other end in terms of auditing them is they're generally like, they're very optimistic with their estimates. Like it is very rare for me to have seen in the years that I have audited traditional publishers. It is very rare that a title does not have to be written down. So usually they print way more books than they need, and then like they can't sell the books. And so the bookstores are like, well, we're not going to have all these books sitting in our warehouses and taking up shelf space. Like we got other new books to, you know, to put out on the floor to try and sell to customers. So the bookstores will return all of those to the publishers, and the publishers are just like, well, I don't know what to do with these. So they remaindered them. So there's two things that they do. So with remainders are like when you get pallets and pallets of these returns from bookstores, right? Like returns that the bookstores could not sell, and the publishers will resell those cartons and cartons and pallets of books to the bargain bin bookstores. Like, so there are a subset of book retailers called remainder stores, and these stores, they buy the books for like substantial discounts. I can't remember off the top of my head like what the range of discount tends to be, but like it's like pennies on a dollar, right? And they buy these books, and so that's how when you walk into like some of these remainder bookstores, like there used to be one in Sydney that was like right in the middle of the city, and it was called like Basement Bargain Books or something like that. You see like a lot of titles there, and it's like $1. It's like $1 a book, or like maybe a couple of dollars for a hardcover. Those are remaindered books, right? And they usually have some sort of marking on like the edge of the pages, like a line drawn through them to indicate that this is a remaindered copy. And that's how those bookstores can afford to run, because they are not paying the full cost of like they're not paying the wholesale price for those books. They are buying those books as like, because the publishers are selling those books to these bargain basement remainder stores at a loss, right? Because it is better to, like, if you've invested $10,000 in print run and you only sold, like, say, $5,000 worth of those books at retail, which means you made a decent margin on them, you're still stuck with $5,000 of inventory on hand that you can't sell. So it is better to sell all that for, like, say, $500 to a remainder bookstore and like just get it off your balance sheet and make room for other books that you've got coming in, and at least recover some of that loss, even though it's not much. Sometimes like when remaindered stores and they can't sell it or they won't take it though, like publishers don't really have any choice but to pulp the book. So if they can't remainder a book, they will pulp the book, which basically means to send it to like book graveyard for book recycling. And so like the books will literally get turned into pulp. And usually in the case of where books get remaindered or are about to get pulped, publishers will reach out to the authors and be like, hey, you know, we have 10,000 copies of your book that didn't really sell. Do you want to buy them? And like they will offer it to the author at that price. So that's how Sanderson got a lot of his early like bulk copies of books. Like, so like he wasn't, you know, authors, I think in their contract, and I don't want to make general statements about this because publishing contracts like can be very specific and very individual, and obviously like they're negotiable as well, but like a lot of publishing contracts usually will say that we will provide you with like X number of print copies of a book that you have authored. So for example, I have behind me this is the textbook that I wrote the last time I was on a work for hire arrangement, and like this is my complimentary copy of the textbook that I got under my publishing contract. for that. And so like some authors will get like they'll have like a certain number of copies. I think Darren who is the author of Iron Widow, she's talked about in one of her videos on her publishing journey about like the number of copies that she got like for her own use as an author out of her publishing contract. But like yeah, sometimes like, you know, I think with Elantris, for example, when the first print run got remaindered, like Sanderson found out about it, that they were getting remaindered, and went and bought all of the remaining books, and would have bought it for like a substantial discount, and that's what he was running his initial web store with. So yeah, definitely that is a thing. Connor says, I think Brandon may go down in history as one of the most influential authors ever. His lectures and YouTube channel are having a huge effect on the next generation of writers. Yep, I can definitely say that as somebody who has been hugely influenced by the frameworks and the tools that he uses in his writing, because I'm just like, this makes so much sense. Like, I have tried writing stuff using Save the Cat, and like Save the Cat I think is a very good and useful framework for analysis, definitely. But like, I have tried plotting using Save the Cat. Has not worked. Like, every single time I've tried plotting with Save the Cat, I'm just like, doesn't work for me. I can't get it to work. But when I try plotting something with Sanderson's model of like promise, progress, payoff, like that works for me. Like I understand how that works. It's a very character driven approach to plotting, and it makes total sense. Like, it makes total sense to think about your plot archetype and the different kinds of stories out there, and because that kind of really defines both your promise as well as the kinds of progress that you make towards that promise. And then when you're thinking about plotting or writing a novel in terms of what is the promise, what is the progress, what is the payoff, it just makes total sense, and it results in very character driven narratives that you normally don't see when you try plotting something like using Save the Cat. Because I tried plotting my Broadway musical using Save the Cat, and it was funny because my collaborator on that musical, she at the time was working as an editor with Penguin, and like very good editor, by the way. She has edited some like award-winning novels out there. And yeah, we tried plotting with Save the Cat. It did not work because like I think about 3 months after we plotted it, like both of us sat down, looked at the thing, and we're just like, this makes no sense from a character perspective. Like this plotting method is definitely not working. Actual Kevin says, Deborah, it looks like you lost your bet. Yeah, like, yeah, I know. It was just ridiculous. There are so many things that I did not factor into my spreadsheet, which like, that's like the number one rule of modeling, right? Like, what I should have done with my spreadsheet when I did all of this modeling is I should have built the model, right? And then what I should have done was I should have done, and I would have done this had I had the time, but I totally did not have the time to do this, is I should have done like a low, medium, and a high scenario. Like, so usually, you do, like when you do detailed simulations, you would do multiple scenario analysis, and then you would probability weight those different scenarios, and that would actually give you a much more accurate estimate. And then I should have also done a sensitivity analysis just to figure out where the different points of sensitivity were in the model, and then I would have come out with a much more accurate estimate. But yeah, like it was gonna be. It was a fun modeling challenge for me. I haven't done a lot of modeling in a while, simply because like there's no actual demand for me to do that in what I do now. Like, hopefully eventually I will get to the point where I actually generate enough data that it is worth modeling out some of the P&Ls for my future titles and things like that. But like, yeah, I kind of missed geeking around with the spreadsheet, because that was a lot of fun. And if no, I should say the next one I'll do, I don't know if I will do one for Words of Radiance, because Words of Radiance is like, it's going to be a bit different being a leatherbound Kickstarter. You know what, I probably will do one. I won't be able to resist when it goes up. I will probably do one, just because everybody's just going to be like, what's going to happen with Words of Radiance, right? Especially if Words of Radiance comes out with the rock novella, in which case you would have a very similar thing where he did Rhythm of War with Dawnshard, and then he would do Words of Radiance, Leatherbound Kickstarter coming out with Horn Eater, I think is the working title for the rock novella. In which case I'm just like, dude, I don't know where you're finding all this time. But apparently Horn Eater needs to be written at some point, like after Stormlight 5, I want to say. So maybe it will work, because like later this year he will be far enough progressed in Stormlight 5 that he will know what needs to be written for Horneated. So yeah, you know, it's entirely possible. Connor McCloy says, Sanderson has said that Amazon is about 85% of his income. I'm sure that includes print and ebook, but not even he can really cut out Amazon. Okay, so on that point, I think what I found in the specific interview with, I think it was the New York Times that they did on his Kickstarter, he said his income is about 80% ebook and audiobook, which is hugely surprising to me, given like the number of print copies he can actually move. So audio, like, I can't find the exact live stream where he talked about this as well, but I think it was somewhere around the release of Starsight. So I think Starsight was coming out, the pandemic was in place, and he had made a decision to not do any like promotional events or touring or whatsoever, even though he could have, because he was like, no, I really want to get going on the next book, and like the fans are getting, you know, Starsight, so it's still a book. And I remember him saying that his publisher was really nervous because because Starsight is one of his Wired titles, so I think it's actually, I want to say Delacourt, probably wrong, but it's not Tor, it's his Wired publisher. He said that they were really nervous about him not doing the book tour because they thought it might like depress the release sales, which it didn't actually end up doing. So I think it was on one of the Starsight live streams afterwards that he said audiobook income for him in particular has just been like growing as a percentage of his overall product mix. And so yeah, like it is I feel like print's never actually going to go entirely away, and certainly for like the genres I work in where like it's kids books, you have to do print, right? You can't get away from doing print at the moment. Like I think out of the beta reward copies that I have to ship out today, like I would say like about 70 or 80% have opted for hardcovers, right? And if I were to offer a board book format as well, I feel like half of the people who have opted for hardcovers would probably want to opt for a board book format instead, which you can't print on demand, unfortunately. So like in the back of my head, I'm just like, I will probably have to try a Kickstarter at some point when I'm confident enough that I can generate a minimum of 100 sales, like of any given title, and then I will probably try and do a Kickstarter for a board book format, because 100 is kind of like the minimum breakpoint that you can get to do an offset print run with an offset printer in like China or Taiwan or something like that. I know another publishing house in my niche, like it's a self-publishing business, Biddy Bow. They do board books for bilingual board books. They work with a printer who does a minimum order quantity of 1,000 copies, which I'm just like, I'm not at 1,000 copies, like, because I suck at marketing and I have not done enough marketing to build up to a point where I have a list where I could guarantee that on launch I would get 1,000 copies sold as part of a pre-order. Let's see, I'm so behind on the chat, guys. Nat Nicholton has just joined. Hello. Suave says, I really wish I could attend those classes he teaches. I mean, you basically can. Like, the only things he does not put up on YouTube for his BYU writing course, his BYU, what is the subject name? I think it's like writing science fiction and fantasy. I think like if they give it like a really typical boring like university lecture name. The only things you don't get if you kind of work through the YouTube lectures is you don't get the smaller workshops, but the workshop stream is limited to a smaller number of people anyway. I think they only accept like 20 or 30 students out of like the hundreds who go to the BYU course generally. Last time when he posted the 2020 lectures, like I think he actually live streamed them. And so like, you know, he was answering questions in the chat. So the next time he uploads those lectures, like you can totally do it. And it would probably be great if you organized your own writing group and tried to do the assignments, because what he does is in the lectures, I think at the very end of the lectures, he does talk about what the homework is for that week. Or at least like you can kind of glean like what the homework is. And so you could totally do his writing course. Like it's just, you would have to take a self-learning approach and just basically assess your own work. But you should be doing that anyway if your goal is to become an author, because in any field, really, like in any field, you should totally develop the capacity to self-critique and self-reflect on your work, because you can't always rely on other people to give you an honest critique. And sometimes, even though the critique comes from an honest place, it may not be the right critique for you to action in terms of what you're trying to do. So, you know, like being able to critique and reflect on your own stuff is a really good thing. Connor says, I'm curious, what kind of sales numbers do you think a publisher like Tor do? Oh, like that's a hard question to answer. Like Tor is massive. And Tor has multiple imprints within, no, hang on, I gotta back up. So Tor is an imprint of Macmillan. Macmillan is the actual publishing company. And Tor itself has a number of, I'm gonna get my terminology wrong, but like there's like multiple imprints. Like, so there's like a Tor.com imprint, which is different to like the main Tor books print, and then there's like some others. And like trying to get a comprehensive list of all of their titles, it's really hard. So when I was auditing publishers, like, to give you guys an idea of how outdated their systems are, like it's just ridiculous, right? I remember going to audit a Australian subsidiary of a big 5 publisher. Was it the big 5 at the time? I can't remember how many were in existence at the time. This was a while ago, but like one of the big publishers, their Australian subsidiary. And I was like, okay, so to run this analysis, you know, to assess like the recoverability of all these author advances that you still have on your balance sheet, like I need a list of all your titles and like, you know, how the sales numbers are doing and all that stuff. And it was trying to get that information out of the system was hell. Like it's not that they didn't have it, right? Like they had it. Like you could sit next to an editor or somebody in the editorial department, and like you could ask them to pull up sales numbers, and like it would come up on their screen, and like you could click here, and like it would, you know, open a new window and do all that kind of stuff. But if you were like, hey, can I get like an export of everything in that database? They'd just be like, no, I have no functionality to do this, because they were clicking around on the screen that looked like the UI had been designed from like the early 90s, like Microsoft Windows 3.1. Was it 3.1? Microsoft Windows 98 kind of like UI design. And you know, that was the good publishers. Like some other publishers, like they were using green screen like terminals, like where you had to type stuff, and it was just it was horrific. Like their systems are absolutely horrific, which is why like trying to pull any of these numbers, it's like pulling teeth. And if you've been following the conversation about what's happening over in traditional publishing on Twitter, then yeah, like they're pretty much they're not investing money into their internal systems. They're not investing in their staff. Like staff are burning out and leaving in droves, and it's just kind of a hot mess over there right now. And so in terms of like estimating the kinds of sales numbers that a publisher like Tor would do, even if you look at Macmillan, I think, is Macmillan publicly listed? No, like when you kind of work your way through the corporate trees of all these publishers, like a lot of them are actually privately owned. I think Macmillan might be one of the ones who's not, so you can look up their financial statements. But having said that, a lot of these publishing businesses also they're conglomerates, right? Because there are a lot of parallels between the different entertainment industries, let's say. So there's a lot of parallels between books and film and TV and, you know, a lot of other stuff. And so a lot of these companies, they work in conglomerates, and in those conglomerates, when you consolidate the publishing businesses up into those overall financials, like the publishing business is not a significant enough part of the overall business of the conglomerate that there's very little disclosures in there, if you can even get disclosures at all, because like some of these really huge publishers, they're all privately owned, so they don't disclose anything basically. Like they're all owned by private investors, usually like one family or like one individual, for example. And so getting any data in there it's impossible unless they choose to voluntarily disclose. I think BookScan might be the way that you could get it, but BookScan costs lots of money. I can't remember how the founder of BookScan originally got his data, because he got really pissed off that like you couldn't get any data on industry-wide sales, because like, oh, sorry, not BookScan. Oh, I'm sorry. So BookScan, the Nielsen BookScan is, it tracks all the sales through various retail outlets, and it tracks it mainly by ISBN, I think, and it covers, like, Nielsen are very, like, they're very upfront about the incompleteness of their data. They're just like, yeah, like, this is like 80% of like all the book sales that happen out there, like, we think maybe, like, I'm just kind of like, if your data is incomplete, I don't know how you're guessing that, like, you're missing 20%, like maybe it's 60%, who knows. And so there's that, and then there's the other service. Oh, what is it called? There was a guy who came from the indie side of things and was just like getting really pissed off that BookScan was incomplete, and that there was no other easy way of getting like an industry-wide look at the data. So he started, I think it was a data scraping service, like scraping Amazon and like some other places. Eventually he built it up to a point where it's like a whole business now, and it's like the default thing that everybody goes to for sales numbers. I'm like so sleep deprived from like doing my book launch this week that like I am totally like misnaming all these things. Like, is that BookScan? I don't know, but like, yeah. Anyway, getting access to that, it costs money. So I don't have access to that because I can't justify the investment of spending a couple of $1,000s to get that data right now, because it's largely irrelevant to me. Because I'm just like, my immediate problem is like selling enough books. So yeah, it is very difficult to estimate those sales numbers. But if you could search that database by publisher or imprint more specifically, you could do that. You could do that. I don't know whether that service would actually let you pull out all of that data with APIs or with a report, because it's going to be a lot of data. Like there are millions of titles published, so it would be so difficult to organize. Connor says, if the big five were better organized, they would have taken over ebooks before Amazon even had a chance. Hard to say. Like, in theory, yes, but it's kind of the same thing with like how Kodak failed to capitalize on the digital camera. Like they were just so focused on the print aspect of the business that they just kind of completely dismissed it. And again, like I remember sitting across the table from the CFO of an Australian subsidiary of one of these big five publishers, and this was right back when print on demand was becoming a thing and self-publishing was becoming a thing. And I was like, hey, so like, you know, because there's usually this part of the audit where we sit down, we have a conversation about the industry and where it's heading and what it's likely going to do to the operating risks of the company and things like that. And I was like, so like, what do you think about this whole self-publishing thing? And like, they just completely dismissed it. They were just like, nah, it's never going to go anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, oh man, like you guys really not seeing the forest for the trees. Like you guys are, I can't explain why they didn't think about it. Why nobody jumped on it. Like and honestly, from my experience of working in a corporate environment, like I would guess it's probably down to like a lot of those businesses, like they're not really built around a culture of innovation. Like because that's kind of not like the priority in their DNA, right? Like so I think even had they taken ebook seriously, I think culturally speaking, Amazon's culture, even though there are some very toxic aspects to the Amazon work culture, I think Amazon probably would have won that fight anyway, because like they're just like their entire motto is just being relentlessly focused on the customer experience. So no matter what you know happens in terms of technological developments and things like that, Amazon is always going to be focused on doing the thing that makes it easier for people to buy the things that they want. Like that is the entire Amazon experience. And even right now, like, you know, they're running massive losses on the Prime program. Like there is no way that they can provide all of these Prime benefits and actually make a profit on that. They're clawing back that loss on Prime from different areas of their businesses. I think based on the report that came out last year, it looks like it's through the third-party seller marketplace. And yeah, like from a business standpoint, like genius strategy, right? Like lock in the captive market, and once you have the captive marketplace, then sellers, vendors, everybody has to be on that marketplace, because if you're not, you're missing out on this massive pool of customers. And yeah, that means like, you know, Amazon can put up like FBA fees as much as they want, and you pretty much have to pay them. Like that is what people who are making their income, their living from selling via the Amazon marketplace is saying. Like, Amazon keeps putting up these fees, and we can't not pay them, because if we don't pay them, like, we don't make sales of our things. And then, you know, you've got Amazon coming in from the other side going, ooh, like, look at all this fancy data. Like, this thing is selling really well for, like, kitchen appliances. We're just gonna, you know, take a look at all that data and do our own generic knockoff version of that, and basically steal all of the traffic that was going to originally come to the small business who was doing that thing. Like, there's been so many documented instances of this happening. And like, yeah, I'm very nervous for the day when Amazon gets to a point with their experiments with AI, and like, you know, like they haven't announced this anywhere. Like, this is pure speculation on my part, right? But there have been plenty of experiments with GPT-3, which is the most advanced one of the most advanced neural networks for artificial intelligence out there when it comes to like writing. And like, Amazon has all of these self-published books, not just self-published books, like traditionally published books. It's got all that in ebook content. It's got all the text. It's got access to like a lot of very, very clever AI engineers. It's got a wealth of data on what people click on and buy. Like, I'm just like, if I was Jeff Bezos, like, or somebody else in his team who was looking at like where the future is going, I'd just be like, I would have people working like 24/7 on solving the problem of, can we get an AI to procedurally write a whole bunch of novels that, you know, those novels are never going to pass for any kind of like masterpieces, or you know, I don't think we have AI developed to a point where it could go head to head with a human writing something. I don't think we and win in terms of like moving a reader emotionally. So I don't think, if ever, we would have like an AI be able to write like a Hugo nominated book, for instance. But there is enough data out there that, based on the little bit of machine learning that I know, which I've, like, you know, full disclosure, I've only done like one course on it via Coursera. It is Dr. Andrew Ng's course on machine learning. Excellent, by the way, if you are ever interested in that. Like, there's no reason why they couldn't be working on this today. Like, and with some of the AI procedurally generated art that's out there, like, you could generate some pretty awesome covers from that. Like, I'm just like, the majority of readers, like, especially like the ones that writers in the, say, romance or thriller genres, or like mil sci-fi, for example, go for like these whale readers that the likes of Michael Anderle and Chris Fox and stuff are targeting. Like, you know, I really have big question marks over whether or not, like, in a couple of years, like, and putting a time frame on this stuff is hard, right? Because generally we underestimate what can happen in the long term, but we like overestimate what can happen in the short term. So like, in the next 10 years, like, I do have question marks over whether these authors who are churning out more pulpy fiction, I do question whether or not they could keep up with say some better machine learning generated novels. Like, I really do, because when you read some of these pulpier fiction, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I have my own trashy reads that I totally enjoy, and I read them, and I'm like, I read them and I know it is completely trashy, but nevertheless I still enjoy it. Like, I'm still having fun as a reader. But like, I'm just like, when is it going to get to the point where like, you're not going to be able to, as a human, compete with an algorithm, with a machine, on like speed and like consistency? You just can't. Like, that is like literally the first rule of process automation is like, is this thing repetitive? Yes. Is this thing like fairly standardized? Is, you know, plot tropes, all that kind of stuff? Yes. Like, is this thing, you know, like, it does it need some sort of special X factor or whatever? Like, no. Like, if it's a repeatable standardizable process like that takes up a lot of human effort, like that's usually the first place you should start with automation. So I'm just like, yeah, like the more I reflect on this, the more I'm just like, I can't see how the 20 books to 50K approach, where you're just trying to churn out as many pulp novels as you can, and no, you know what? Like that's probably being unfair. There are probably many authors following that approach who don't consider their work as pulp, but I'm just like, I don't see how a pulp approach to authorship is going to necessarily be sustainable into the future, because like it's just you're not going to be able to compete with a machine on this point. Like you just won't be able to, because the machine is going to be able to churn out like 1,000 novels in a day, right? And all 1,000 are going to be unique. And let's say, because, you know, based on the experiments that have been done over in music and things like that, like there has actually been a Broadway musical that has been written by an AI in partnership with a human composer and lyricist, I think. But like, you know, what it did was the AI churned out like a bunch of stuff. There was a vague cohesion in it, and what you had was you had the human writers go through it and like fix a couple of things. They've had AIs try to finish Mahler's Unfinished Symphony. They've had like, and you know, I've listened to it and I'm just like, oh, this is not great. Like this obviously it does is nowhere near the masterpiece that, you know, Mahler himself would have written. But like, yeah, like you know, it does it do a good enough job that the casual person who is consuming this kind of art or appreciating this kind of art would just be like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, probably. I went to another talk by I think a group of researchers who were experimenting with getting an AI to compose in Bach style, and it did a good job. Like, Baroque music is not my favorite period of music to listen to, so I was like, you know, I played a lot of Bach, I've listened to a lot of Bach, but they were doing like they were making the audience guess. They got the AI to write a bunch of Preludes and Fugues, which is like a very famous work of Bach's, and like, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to all 48 of them. Like I've listened to a whole bunch, sorry, 24, 48, yeah, 48. And like, yeah, I got stuff right as often as I got stuff wrong about whether or not the piece that was written was actually by Bach. And so, yeah, like it's on the horizon. So I think Sanderson's approach, where it's, you know, like he retains a lot of the creative control. He writes at a sufficient pace to keep publishing relatively consistently and frequently, like once every year at least, without necessarily going to the extreme pulp end of things, and maintaining that authenticness with his readership and all of that. I really think that that's going to be the only viable way that you can compete with an AI doing the AI thing, because otherwise, like, you know, you have nothing else distinguishing you as a human over an AI, like, but literally your ability to be human. And so if you're not leaning into the humanist side of things, like, you're gonna get beaten by an AI, basically. Connor asks, do you think they would create fake author names for the AI to write under? Yeah, probably. Like, they have so much data. I bet you that they could do an analysis of like total sales figures and sales patterns by pen names, analyzed by gender, ethnicity, whether or not it's under initials or not, like that kind of thing. And I bet you they would find some patterns and correlations that you would not think about in terms of whether or not a pen name actually affects sales of a book. Like they've done research like that on like how names on a resume, right? Like exact same resume or CV, different name. They've done studies on how that affects people's hiring decisions. I'm sure that pen name and how it looks affects a reader's decision on whether or not they buy. Like there are readers out there who are, you know, obviously aware of their biases and are actively trying to you know, work against those biases or like to suppress those biases. But equally, there are a lot of readers out there, particularly these whale readers, who I don't think would be shopping for the next read with that kind of critical mindset. They You know, they may well lean towards stereotypes like, oh, you know, an author of this gender can't write this, or an author who doesn't appear to be of this ethnicity can't write this, or an author who, you know, like XYZ, like all of those kind of stereotypes that we have about gender and race and identity and all that stuff. I'm sure, I am positive that would definitely affect pen names and how sales do and things like that. Connor says, I doubt AI could write epic fantasy, but romance or thriller might work. I really think romance and thriller are going to be, sorry, I should say romance, thriller, erotica. I would say those three genres seem like they would be the easiest ones for an AI to start, namely because in those genres, like, you stick so closely to the tropes, and there is so much data out there in terms of like actual titles published and sales data and things like that, that I think you could probably do a reasonably good job of patching together a novel. Like, it would be a mammoth undertaking, but I definitely think it would be possible. Connor also asked, would using AI be worth it for Amazon? They already get a nice cut even with a human writer. Plus, it might be bad PR. I don't know. Like, it's the kind of thing that, like, I mean, Amazon have already got Amazon Studios and things like that. But like, for me, I'm just like, why not, right? Like, it is the kind of experiment where, and a lot of these Silicon Valley companies have adopted the Google practice of like 20% time. I should actually ask my friend who is an engineer at Amazon whether or not they get 20% time still, because like Amazon does work a little differently. But like, if I were working at Amazon in one of those departments and I had 20% time, I'd be like, why the hell not? Like, let me try it. I have all the data. Let's see where it goes. And you know, if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't like it. And the other thing that they could do, right, even if they never publish this, like themselves with AIs under AI pen names, right? Like, you're sitting on a gold mine, right? Like, you could license that tool out to authors on your platform and be like, are you struggling? Like, you know, can you imagine a future where, you know, you log into your bookshelf and like the Amazon algorithm just like has an alert pop up and it's like, hey, we noticed your most recently published title, blah, 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 is not doing so well. Like, this is where it ranks, like relative to like titles in a similar category. Would you like to, you know, sign up for this Amazon service where like we can have our AI generate you like a whole bunch of writing prompts or a plot outline or a blurb or whatever else have you, and you know, you can just tweak that, you know, and they would charge you a probably nice subscription fee for it, or they would be like, in exchange for using this tool, like instead of paying us a 30% royalty, you know, we're going to take it up to like 50%. Like, the things you could do after you invent or develop such a tool is just like, there's a lot of things you could do. And besides, like, a lot of the culture at these startups, like they really prize innovation and they really prize original thinking. And so I would be super surprised if like there is not already a team at Amazon working on this actively somewhere, probably like under wraps and like, you know, very, very super secret stealth and things like that. But like somebody is already working on this, because there are a number of companies and AI writing tools out there that are already working on this. And so like, if smaller players are already working on it, Amazon's going to be working on it, or they're going to be like looking to buy one of these small players in a few years. Words for Right asks, what are we counting down to? The countdown has finished. The countdown finished like an hour and 10 minutes ago or something like that. I've just been like going on about like the publishing industry at large in general, but we were counting down to Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter, which is it's just insane. Like, it just came in at like 41.7 million in the end, with over 185,000 backers. It's just been one insane run. Connor says AI books will be the new auto-tune. Yeah, like there is definitely a certain gimmick to it. Like there are plenty of musicians and producers who use auto-tune deliberately as an effect, to get an effect, right? Like who gets criticized for this a lot? I think LL Cool J, for one, gets criticized for it a lot, and it's just like, yo, you know he can sing, right? Oh no, sorry, was it LL Cool J? Maybe it was The Weeknd, like one of them too. like loads of people are just like, this dude can't sing, like, you know, like whatever, and it's just like, no, he can sing, like you can watch footage of him singing, like you know, a cappella, and like dude can sing. He's using autotune for an effect. So yeah, like I'm sure there would be readers out there who would just be like, if my favorite author is facing writer's block, you know, and can't think ahead, like yeah, I would totally be open to them using an AI tool to generate like a whole new plot line for, you know, whatever universe or characters or that I love, and just write around that. Kind of scary actually, because I think what might happen then is like there will be a perception that like that is all you need to do to publish a good book, and by good I mean like satisfying for its target audience, because it's just like no, there's a lot more steps to that, to trying to write a satisfying book. Like but I do think it will, from a reader perception at least, if that becomes a commonly accepted thing, yeah, like this whole work-life balancing, the expectations about how frequently you should be able to publish, like I think that would shift. That would definitely shift a lot, because it'd just be like, well, you know, what are you complaining about? Like, why is it taking you so long to write the next book? Like, can you imagine, like, if we got to a point where people are just like, man, we are so fed up with George R.R. Martin not writing The Winds of Winter that we're just gonna like put the entire corpus of A Song of Ice and Fire and all of the spin-offs and world-building notes that have been published about Westeros, and just have the AI just kind of like make some relational matches between like the characters and the plot threads and things like that, and just have the AI write their freaking story, just so we would get like an end to it. I don't know if I would be in support of them putting like the TV show in there, because I'm just like, and again, I stopped watching the TV show after the first season when like things started kind of going a little bit off the rails, and yeah, I hear that the last season did not go well, especially after they ran out of like books to adapt, and they just I think what I heard was Martin just kind of like told them the idea of like the ending that he had in mind, and they just kind of like did their own thing, and yeah, like I don't think that was generally well received. Connor says T-Pain. Yes, T-Pain was who I was thinking of, I think. Yeah, like T-Pain uses autotune a lot as a effect. Monsuno says, I thought AI was how they made so many manga. Just kidding. Yeah, like honestly, manga and comics is really impressive, like especially like the serial releases where like we have a new issue coming out every week, and it's just like it's amazing in terms of the production workflow. I think we all have a lot to learn from that, to be honest. Hannah says, I want to see what an AI looking at Lovecraft would pump out. I don't think an AI would understand George's work. Man, yeah, like there's gotta be, I think, one of those AI tools already set up with like Lovecraft's corpus of work. I'm pretty sure there is. I know there was somebody on the writing forums that I frequent. They were experimenting with an AI tool, and whatever training set that had been used for that particular AI, it had clearly been trained on all of the Twilight novels, because what happened was I think that person put in a prompt from, I think they put in the first line of Barry Cormorant, the traitor, into the AI, and it spat out a bunch of stuff, and you know, the author, who also frequents those forums, like he was horrified. I was horrified, because I was like, what are you doing? Like, Baru was an amazing book. Please don't do this. I don't want to see an AI destroy Baru. And so I suggested, like, maybe you should start with like something else, like say Twilight, and see what happens. And like it spat out something that was eerily like you know, actual passages of Twilight, because I think that AI had actually been trained on Twilight. So like, you know, you put in Bella and it like spat out Edward and Alice and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like there are definitely AI tools out there who have already been trained on a lot of these like high profile authors and stuff like that. Connor says, manga is the only industry that makes Brandon look like a slacker. That and web serials. Like the volume of output that some of these top web serial authors have is just, it's just insane. But like they're pumping out rough drafts. Like they don't have time to edit anything, unfortunately. I think the author of Mother of Learning and Beware of Chicken, like they have both slowed down their publishing schedule the moment that they had to try and edit stuff, because Mother of Learning just put out an edited version of Arc 1 on Kindle, I think last year, and The War of Chicken, I haven't checked recently, but I think they're going to be putting out the first arc on Kindle soon as well, which I would be very interested to like see just how much editing has gone into those things. I know Mother of Learning in the end did not end up having that much edited. I think the author tried and he struggled. He, like, every time he tried to revise some big structural things, like I think he really struggled. But like Arc 1 was fairly tight anyway, being in the middle of the story. Beware Chicken, it'll be interesting as well, because like that's a little bit slower pace, being kind of like a slice of life progression fantasy. Connor says, do you think serialization will catch on in fantasy self-pub? I mean, like, people are already doing it out there. I have a video on serialization which does go through one of the authors who was serializing on the Kindle store as opposed to on Vella, because I'm really hard pressed to find anybody who is actually still actively praising Vella. Like, across the board, everybody I've talked to about serialization and Vella is just like, Vella sucks. Vella was just something that Amazon threw up because they wanted to compete with Wattpad and like, all the other serialization platforms out there, and then they kind of half-assed the implementation. So like there are people who are serializing fantasy on the Kindle store. They're doing it by writing episodes, and they're doing it as like, it goes into the Kindle short reads, which is a category that is automatic based on word count, and often has high visibility, because like, just with fantasy generally, there's like, I read a lot of fantasy, and when I see a short fantasy book, I'm just like, I don't think that is enough story for me, because I love my epic fantasy. And so I'm just like, if the book is like not this thick on the library shelf, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to read it. I don't know if this is epic enough for me. I also don't know whether I would actually go for, as a reader, serialized epic fantasy. But if you are interested, because I have not had the time to do the researched take on this yet, Cassandra Clare, I know, like, just ignore the controversy, right, around Cassandra Clare, and just kind of look at what she's doing from a business perspective. She is serializing something on Tumblr, of all places, right now. She's doing this for the entire year. I think the serialization, she started in December. So The Secrets of Blackthorn Hall is being serialized on Tumblr. And she is doing this as, I think, a promotion and fan engagement tactic in between the release of the final volume of, I've forgotten what this last book in her last Shadowhunter series is. I think it's called like The Dark Artifices or something. It's a book about the where the Blackthorn kids are grown up and stuff. And I think the publication of that last volume is at least a year away, and it's been a while. It's been a while since the last book came out. So yeah, like, she's serializing basically an entire novel's worth of stuff, and it's very clever how she's done it. She's not written a novel. What she's done is she has written, it's all epistolary format between all these characters in her Shadowhunter world, and it's brilliant. It's clever. It's very, very clever in terms of marketing. And of course, what I would be interested in is to see, like, at the end of the year, whether this free serialization of this novel-length work, this epistolary novel-length work on Tumblr, which again, it's free platform. It's not even on a standard serialization platform, right? Like, it's on Tumblr, because Tumblr is like, where a lot of the fanfic community is, and obviously Claire got her start as a fanfic writer, and she's got a massive following on Tumblr. That's why she's serializing on Tumblr. I would be interested to see whether or not that has a noticeable effect on her sales for the third volume, which logically should be high anyway, because it is supposed to be the conclusion to the whole Shadowhunters thing. So I think anybody who is in her readership would be like, they would be buying this. But also, it's just like, we're not going to be able to get the sales numbers for those unless, like, she discloses, or her agent discloses, or her publisher discloses, whichever. So at this point, it's kind of like a moot thing, but I do think it is a very, very interesting thing to look at, definitely. Connor says, I think serialization would especially suit author-tubers. I love the idea of serialization. Ebook definitely makes it affordable to do. The numbers don't care about the scandal. I agree. The numbers do not care about the scandal, right? Like, some authors, some businesses, some brands definitely embrace scandal as part of their brand and their platform, and they will take the traffic from scandal because it works for them. Yeah, and obviously it works for Claire because she has a massive readership. She has a really, really big readership, and they are like super, super engaged and super passionate about her stuff. Yeah, I don't know. If you are interested in author tubers who do serialize, I think Julian Gray on her channel, she is serializing, I think, her fantasy on Wattpad. So she does post her stuff on Wattpad. And from what I've seen of her channel, she does a lot of more booktube stuff, like where she reads through and critiques like works by other authors and other author tubers. I know she's been working through the Cyborg Tinkerer. She's worked her way through the Saver's Champion. I don't know if she's done the Saver's Sister, to be honest, but like, yeah, like if you want to look for author tubers who do serialization, Julian Gray, that's your best bet. Connor asks, what do you think of the backlash Brandon got from other authors? Oh yeah, I had a lot to say in my last upload about this, and I constrained myself to like a 2-minute rant. Well, I constrained myself to leaving in 2 edited minutes of my rant because in reality, when I was filming the video, I of course went on a much longer extended rant about it. But like, honestly, I don't get it, right? I don't get it for a number of reasons. Number one, it's like publishing, or at least like publishing books and books as a product, as an industry, and again with like a lot of these art forms and entertainment, right? It's not a zero-sum game. Like, and I talked about this in my video when Brandon Sanderson was polling his fan base about like whether or not he should do a Patreon. Like, at an individual, like at the individual level, right? As an individual, considering your disposable income and your budget for a constrained time frame of, let's say, a month, right? Is it a zero-sum game in terms of how many books you will buy? Yes, probably, because like as much as I love books, I am probably not going to go out and blow $200 on books this month if my, you know, regular budget and disposable income only allows for me to spend like say $20 on books. And to some extent, like a lot of the backlash that Brandon got from his own fan base when he proposed Patreon was they were like, well, we're not really a fan of the subscription model. Interesting to revisit that now that a lot of people have signed up for like the swag boxes, right? Which is like, it's kind of the same thing. It's like the same thing, but different also in that it's like a 1-year subscription, right? Which in some ways, it's actually more locked in than the model that he proposed for the Patreon, right? Because with Patreon, you can cancel at any time, right? Like everybody perceives of Patreon as this like long-term subscription thing when it's really not. Like you could, like there are people out there who sign up to a Patreon on like for a month. They blast their way through all the Patreon exclusive, and they're like, you know, they resign from the Patreon at the end of the month and don't get charged for another month, and then like they wait until like you know there's enough of a backlog of Patreon exclusives to build up again, and that like they serially sign on, subscribe, and then like you know unsub and whatever. Like there are people out there who game it, and that's why I'm just like Patreon as a business model. I'm just like there's a lot of risk in there. I know a lot of authors and creators use it as a way to de-risk the volatility in their income, but I'm just like, you have to kind of have certain numbers of people and do a lot of work on Patreon in terms of Patreon rewards and things like that for that volatility to smooth out, at which point I kind of question whether or not doing all of this exclusive stuff with Patreon actually impacts you know the main thing that you were trying to have the Patreon to do in the first place. But yeah, like the backlash from other authors, I really don't get it, because outside of that constrained scenario where it's like I have a certain amount of disposable budget per month to spend on books or entertainment at large, like it's not a zero-sum game. Like, the first thing any avid reader does after they finish a book is just like, I really enjoyed that book. I would like to read another book about this. And like, there are loads of ways to support authors without having to pay for books. Like, you can request their books into libraries, which you can read for free. Like, you can gift their books to friends. Like, you can have friends gift books to you. Like, there are just so many ways that I think any author who is successful actually does more to lift other authors, because like Brandon Sanderson's success and the success of other big authors in fantasy, like, fantasy has become mainstream. Like, there was a general trend for it to become mainstream, but like like fantasy authors becoming big, like, they create opportunities for other authors. So in my mind, I'm just like, you guys should be thanking Brandon Sanderson, because he has just gone out and proved, like, he's a test case. He has proved it is possible. He is so transparent that you could literally look at everything he's done and work out how to do it for yourself and how to adapt it. He's proved it's possible. Will White has followed and proved it is possible. Like, I don't get it. Like, I can understand, like, being resentful that, you know, if you've put in the same number of hours into working on growing your readership as an author and you're not seeing the same growth or similar levels of growth to Sanderson, I can understand, like, the professional envy. Like, I do get that, but I'm also just like, come on, like, he didn't, like, fall over into a pile of money, like, for doing nothing. Like, he's worked really hard for this. And if you keep pointing to things like, oh, well, it's only because he has his own publishing company, I'm like, hello, he built that from nothing. He started with a PayPal button on his website, okay? Like, he started with a PayPal button on his website and, like, remaindered copies of his own books. Like, there's nothing stopping you from setting up a PayPal button on your own website and buying your own remaindered books. Like, there's nothing stopping any of these other authors from going out there and experimenting with it. But, like, a lot of them, when you bring this up, they're just like, no, like, you know, I became an author because I like writing books. Like, okay, like, I don't want to deal with all the business side of things. Like, okay, then you need to accept that you're not going to get the rewards that come with dealing with the business side of things. You can sit there and give up most of your creative control and your financial control and your, like, a large chunk of the proceeds from the sale of your books over to a traditional publisher, or over to an agent, or over to a hybrid publisher, or, you know, what have you. Like, if you don't want to deal with it, because you're not going to get something for free, basically. So, Connor says, rant away. Yeah, I could go on for days about this, but yeah, I really don't get it. Like, if you're gonna be or like, well, he couldn't have done it without this, and you're bitter about it, like, I think that is very misdirected, because it's like, and like, you know, I'm not ruling out that luck and fortune have played a huge part in getting Sanderson to the scale that he operates at, right? But like, I don't like this all or nothing extreme where it's just like, you can either be massively successful, like Brandon Sanderson levels of success, or like, you know, I'm an author who has to work 2 jobs to scrape by because I don't get paid enough in royalties to actually make my rent. Like, there's stuff that happens in between these 2 extremes, and I'm just like, yeah, are we just going to ignore all of this stuff in between? Are we just going to ignore all the, you know, 20 books to 50K people who are doing just fine, like, you know, making a living? Not Sanderson levels of, you know, operational success, but like a good living by getting into the business side of things. Like, are we just not going to have a conversation about that? Like, I don't get it. Connor says, I think people are more willing to spend money if it's an event. Patreon is something you forget about. Kickstarter definitely has more hype. Plus, YouTube videos unboxing it next year will create FOMO. Yeah, like, Sanderson is honestly such an expert at marketing that it is amazing. Like, I honestly, I'm just like, you don't need to pay for a marketing course from people unless, like, you kind of want this stuff spoon-fed to you, which, you know, like, sometimes you're in the mood to be spoon-fed. Like, I have paid for like courses on Instagram and YouTube because I'm just like, you know what? I have limited numbers of hours in the day. I cannot spend all my time analyzing like what people are doing like on all these social media platforms. I will happily pay money to be spoon-fed like the analysis from somebody who is, you know, good at doing this analysis. But like, yeah, if Sanderson and the way he approaches things like works for you and you think that approach would work for you, I'm just like, oh, don't pay for a marketing course. Just look at what Sanderson does, analyze what he does, and like just break it down and then try to replicate that. Try to apply it in a way that applies to your situation because he's so good at marketing. Connor also says, I think there may have been a bit of crabs in the bucket effect going on with the Brandon. Hey, other authors don't like him going out on his own. I still don't understand. Like, it's not like, okay, I wasn't going to do this right, but I will now because it's been triggered. Okay, so I don't like how the dynamic has evolved between a traditional publisher and their authors, like their authors who they sign up to, because like there is such a great demand of authors wanting to become published and thinking that traditional publishing is the way to go. And yes, for a large number of them, like it may well be the best way to go. That it's created this very unequal dynamic where traditional publishers, they have all the power in that relationship. And you see this in terms of like the size of the advances that are getting offered, the terms that get offered in those publication contracts, the royalty rates that they get given, like the extent of the control that they're trying to seize away from authors. Like originally those publishing contracts were like, they're supposed to be a licensing arrangement where you license the right for the publisher to publish that work in a certain number of territories, in a certain number of formats. That's what it's supposed to be, right? It's a licensing agreement for IP. But it's gotten to the point where a lot of these like take so much control away from the authors that it doesn't have the same dynamic that you usually see in a licensing agreement of somebody with very desirable IP. Like certainly not like the kinds of arrangements you see in technology, for example. And I think it's because there is an imbalance, right? Like usually with like groundbreaking new tech and stuff like that, like you've got more people wanting to license the tech than you actually have tech that does as an effective or a similar thing as the IP that they're all competing over. And so the balance of power firmly sits in the court of the person or the entity who owns and controls and develops that IP. Whereas with books, like it's different because with tech, right? Usually the asset you have in question, it's not a commodity product, right? It's the proprietary process, it's an invention, that kind of thing, and so it's not a commodity generally. But with books, what's interesting is that it is very much a commodity product, right? Like, except for, you know, your breakout hits and things like that, books, by and large, it's a mass market product. So it's like, by nature, like the dynamics are already kind of reversed in that sense. And so, yeah, but you end up with these traditional publishers holding all the power and creating very unfavorable commercial arrangements for the authors that sign to them. They give away so many rights that, you know, yes, their work could be as good, or in many cases is as good or even better than Sanderson's work, but they signed away so many of their rights that, you know, they're trapped. They're basically trapped. And so, like, it's kind of like this very toxic dynamic where they're very grateful to the publisher for publishing them in the first place, right? Because like the querying process is, you know, it's absolutely agonizing from what I hear in terms of the people who have done it, who blog about it, and I'm just like, no, not for me. I don't feel like going through that. And you know, by the time you actually, you know, just querying an agent is hard, right? Then your agent has to actually sell the manuscript to a publication house. Then you actually have to go through the agonizing process of working with a publisher, which I have worked with a textbook publisher. it was not a fun experience as an author, working with that kind of entity. It was just like, I'm just like, you do not get what I'm trying to write, and you are actively trying to destroy what I'm trying to write. And so yeah, like it's not a very pleasant process, but like at the end of it, you are a published author, and so there is a lot of gratitude for that, as well as a lot of anger for that, as well as a lot of resentment for the fact that, you know, you came out of it and you're just like, I had to wait, 6 months, 9 months for a royalty check, because royalty payments are in cycles. There's the income quarter where you actually sell the book or whatever. Then there's like then there's the next quarter where all of that income gets accounted for, and like all the collections coming from like the retail outlets, and then there's actually the payment quarter. So like you're getting paid like 9 months after the fact, 9 to 12 months after the fact of your book actually selling, as opposed to like, I mean, Ingram Spark I think pays on, I'm gonna get this wrong, but like you get paid like roughly 60 to 90 days, which is quick for like the traditional royalty cycle. Amazon is even quicker with how quickly they pay on their royalties. And so yeah, like it kind of sucks to like work on a book for 3, 4, 5, however many years, and get like a check for $2,000, like assuming you even earn out your VAT at the end of the day, and you're in a position to actually start getting royalties. So yeah, but I'm just like, you know, so I get it. Like seeing a guy like Sanderson be able to strike out on his own and pull in $41.7 million, like on his own book launch, like I get the professional envy, but at the same time, I'm just like, yeah, like why are you angry at him? Like he's not the reason for why you're in a miserable commercial arrangement with your publisher or your agent or whoever it might be. Like you are, like who you were the one in the negotiations with that counterparty, and if you unfortunately felt that you needed the contract more than they did, and you chose to take those unfavorable terms, like I'm sorry, you don't really have anyone else to blame for that. Like, and yeah, you are stuck with that if you can't convince them to renegotiate the terms of your publication agreement. But equally, it's like, well, you know, like, okay, you're under contract for those books, and like and sometimes like I guess like the next X however many books you're under contract to. Sometimes I think there is an option in there that like they might have like the first right of refusal to any future projects you have, but I'm just like, okay, like get through your contracted books, do a new one, like shop that one around, like maybe try self-publishing that one. You know, like you have options. Like Brandon Sanderson is not the reason why you're in a terrible financial arrangement or situation. Like he's got nothing to do with it. I don't actually see the connection. Like it just endlessly frustrate me. And Connor says, I don't think anyone who is honest can't say 13 unpublished books is just luck. Yeah, definitely. Traditional publishers definitely use their monopoly of power to bully authors. I worry that publishers might start making their contracts more severe to prevent their authors from going indie after they build a name. Yeah. That has been happening for a long time. If you follow a lot of the stuff that the Alliance of Independent Authors and some of the other more established, traditionally published authors, like Barry Eisler is great, by the way. Like contractual terms have been getting worse and worse. Like and like when ebooks became a thing, and like trad publishers started going, oh crap, like we don't have clauses covering ebooks in like our contracts, and they started putting ebook contracts in. Like it was ridiculous. Like HarperCollins got into so much trouble when that slide from their investor presentation got leaked a few years ago, and it was basically like they had a slide showing different formats and the royalty rates that they typically had in their publication contracts with their authors, and like, you know, like it was ridiculously low, the rates they were paying out. Like that's where the 25% rate comes from to the authors for an ebook. And like trad publishers have been arguing for years, and like I have had these conversations with them, like when I was auditing them, where they were like, yeah, but like it's not like no work to produce an ebook and blah 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 blah. And at the time I just kind of like, you know, smiled and nodded because that was what I was supposed to do. But now, like having gone through, I'm like, no, I'm sorry, like the additional work to produce a different format once you already have it in one format, it's like yeah, like there is work. It's not like there's no work, but it is not enough work to justify the size of the royalty that you are taking away from the author to do this work. Like the risk is not there, the level of work is not there, and yeah, it was in my mind, I'm just like that was very unscrupulous. And because a lot of authors at the time, like, you know, a lot of authors don't necessarily study up on these things, right? Like they didn't know what was involved in producing an ebook, and so like they kind of had to take the publisher's word for it that yes, there was all these extra costs and things involved. And yeah, like this is why I'm just like, yeah, I know, like there are some aspects about running a business which you don't want to learn about because it's boring and it's painful. Like anything legal to do with distribution and logistics, to me, I'm just like, oh, I hate all that stuff. But I'm just like, you have to do it. Like, you can't walk into a room and sit down at the negotiating table unless you've done your homework on everything to do with that negotiation. Like, unless you want to get ripped off. In which case, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, if that's your approach to negotiation, then I can't help you, and I can't help you if you feel like you got ripped off, because you probably did. Kind of says TradPub has 3 middlemen between the author and the reader. Agent, publisher, and seller is just too many middlemen. Theoretically, if you're going to break it down to that level, it's 4, because you've got your agent, you've got the traditional publisher, then you've got the traditional publishers' relationships with their wholesale distributors, and then the retail distributors, and then you have the retailers themselves. So yeah, it's a lot of people between the author and the reader, and this is why I'm just like, if you keep letting the supply chain put layers in between you and your end customer, you're gonna be trapped. Like, you are gonna be trapped. And this is why, like, so much of the advice around building an author platform starts with, like, do your website, do your mailing list. If you do nothing else, just do those 2, and like, you will mitigate a whole lot of that risk. Kind of says Amazon may have some bad practices, but I think they've been a huge benefit for authors. Yeah, absolutely. Like, Amazon and other platforms definitely, I think, have been a massive boon just to break that stranglehold over the status quo that the traditional publishers have had. But they're now getting to the point where they are practically part of the infrastructure now, and it's very risky, right? I don't like having to put so many eggs in one basket. Like, you shouldn't do that with books. You should definitely not do that with your suppliers. Like, that is the whole reason why, like, when you read a financial report, like a financial report that is a general purpose financial report that is published, like, for the general public at large from, like, a listed company or something like that, that is why when you read those things, there is a whole section in there where if they have key risks, like key customer risks or key supplier risks, things like that, they have to disclose that, because it is a huge deal. And at the moment, the thing about indie publishing is, like, if you're taking the strategy of being exclusive to Amazon and you're enrolled in KDP Select so you can get your books into the Kindle Unlimited program, like Will White has, very risky play. Like, Will White has also always been on record that he gets the risk, and he is, you know, like, he understands, like, how other authors are uncomfortable with that risk, but Amazon has been very good to him, which, I mean, like, he writes in a genre that is, you know, tailor-made for KU, right? It's like, it's super bingeable, light popcorn reads is what he writes in Cradle, for example. But you can see that even now, like, the moment he got a sizable enough readership to do something like a Kickstarter, he's done a Kickstarter. He's expanding into print because it is very, very risky. The fact that he is exclusive to Amazon and that his audiobooks are exclusive to ACX, like, that's just super, super risky. Mac Talk says, those authors that have gone beyond publishers need to help those to follow. They are the trailblazers, and to help others, they will need to put down some good roads for them to follow. Yeah, so, like, here's the interesting thing, right? It's not so much a matter of the trail not being blazed as so much that it is really a mindset shift. It's a huge, huge mindset shift, and you have to to do it, you have to be prepared to take on a lot of responsibility for the whole process. And like, it's easy for me to say this, right? Like, I have a business background. I have spent, 50, like I have a degree in business. I double majored in accounting and finance. So all of the numbers make a lot of sense to me. I don't have problems with understanding and analyzing numbers. I then went on and spent, about 12 years working as a chartered accountant in professional practice and seeing a lot of companies and things like that. So it is very easy for me to sit here and just go, well, of course, like all the facts, all the facts are like this and all the numbers add up like that. Like, why wouldn't like that? That's why, like, in a lot of my uploads, I'm just like, I struggle. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why you would go traditional publishing when you can like do all of this. And yes, it is a lot of work. And yes, you are, when you make the decision to self-publish, you are deciding to start a business. But like, and again, and as someone who's been on the other side of the desk and seen a lot of businesses get started and things like that, I'm just like, relatively speaking, yes, there is a big risk. Like, yes, you're going to have to put your own money on the line. But like, if you look across at the number of industries where you could start a business, like, publishing is so accessible. Like, the barriers to entry are just insanely low. And I'm not going to repeat the massive rant that I did in my indie publishing video because you guys would be here for like the next half hour if I did that. But I'm just like, of all the industries you could pick to start a business that has the lowest risk of personal financial ruin in the event of failure, publishing is one of them. Like there is a reason why, even though I spent 7 years working on a Broadway musical, I decided to stop working on that and start writing books, because it's just like the amount of investment I would have to do for the musical to get it off the ground, to get interest from a producer, or to try and self-produce it and to convince people to see it and to break even. Like, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. There's a reason why most Broadway musicals take something like 7 years in development, I think, on average. Like, Jonathan Larson spent 7 years to write Rent. A lot of the other big hits like took similar time frames. Like, the most recent hit by a previously unknown writer was Six, the musical, which is like about Henry VIII's ex-wives, his wives collectively. And that was very, very unusual. And it's also a super interesting case study because of how they approached the whole thing. It's fascinating, actually. But yeah, like, publishing a book, like, it is so much less risky compared to any of those other options. But you have to, like, you do have to be prepared to go into it. Like, you can't just you can't just go into it and not do your research and not do your homework and not do the financial analysis and not do your due diligence on the platforms that you're going to use and not put in the hours and hours and hours to build a readership from zero. Like, you have to be prepared for that. And yes, it does take investment of time, if not capital. But I would not go so far to label it as privilege. Like, a lot of other people on AuthorTube and BookTube like to label indie publishing as like a privilege, and I'm like, no, guys, it is not a privilege. It is starting a business. I'm sorry, like name me a single business in a single other industry where you can start the freaking business with the expectation that you're gonna have money from day one. I guess, yeah, you could, like, especially if you're very good at capital raising. Like, certainly there are a lot of people who have the personal connections and network to be able to raise seed money from, investors and things like that, so they don't have to front up any of their own capital. But largely speaking, okay, unless you have that pre-established relationships and networks, and yes, in that case, you could arguably say that is privilege if you have, like, well-connected parents or, whatever. Most investors, right, like, if they're actually investing in the business idea and not just like because they like you and they're treating the investment more as like a gift or something, like, they're going to want to see proof of concept. Okay. So, if you're like my friends who started a food truck business, right? They spent months and months developing their menu, testing recipes, like doing all of that stuff, like buying a food truck, outfitting it, like tens of thousands of dollars. Okay. Like, drawing no income at the time because you didn't have time to work a full-time job on the side while you're trying to do all of this stuff. And so, yeah, like, would you say, oh, you know, that requires financial privilege to start a business? No, like, it's just the thing of starting a business. I'm sorry. You can't start a business from nowhere. Like, like the reason so many immigrants own businesses, it's because, like, hello, when they immigrated from their original their motherland, like, they couldn't get jobs. You know what? Because, like, maybe they didn't speak the language or didn't understand the culture practices in their new homeland, and so, yeah, like, nobody would give them a job. What would they do? They would start a business. Like, was it pleasant at the beginning when they didn't have customers and, like, you know, they couldn't make rent or they couldn't buy food and things? Yeah, of course it was. Was it financial privilege to start a business? Was it financial privilege that, like, they went without, you know, whatever to fund, like, supplies for this? Like, no. Like, and I don't see how one could plausibly apply that label to the same thing as, like, self-publishing, because I'm just like, no, this is not different from starting any other business. Like, is it easier for you if you're somebody who has a partner who has a well-paid full-time job? Is it easier for you if you have personally worked in a high-paying job for a number of years and you have built up a large safety net, so you have a long runway to get this business up and running? Like, yeah, of course it's easier than someone trying to do it when, you know, you've got 3 maxed out credit cards and student loans and you're you know, a single parent and all of that stuff. Of course it's easier. But, like, to call it financial privilege, I'm sorry, we should save the word privilege for, like, things that are actually privileges. Connor asks, is KDP 90-day exclusivity? Yes, it is. You renew it on a 90-day period, so technically Will White could exit at any time. But, like, from what I understand, like, I have heard a lot of authors, like, once you get kind of used to the KU income, and then going out wide, like, you kind of lose that chunk of income you were getting from KU page reads. So I think Michael Andalay has talked about this before, where a lot of their books were in KU, and then, like, moving them out of KU, like, you do see a sizable drop in income unless you've kind of done a lot of work to you know, be able to go out wide with those books. Connor says, a lot of people in the publishing industry are allergic to numbers. And a lot of booktubers have a HR mindset. They need a math/business mindset. I do business plans for startups that have gotten investors for a living. Seeing authors complain about privilege is hilarious. Most startups are from people with almost no connections. Money, yes, because, like, when you don't have connections and money, like, when you can't get a job from anybody else, like, the only thing you can do is go out there and start trying to make a living yourself somehow with a business, with a startup. Like, and it's just, yeah, no. I've already ranted for half an hour. We're not gonna repeat what I just ranted about. Connor says, indie publishing books also has great synergy. You can make money from YouTube while building an audience. Oh, man. Okay, so I was debating whether or not I should do an upload on like, AuthorTube and YouTube, because, like, obviously with Sanderson being so successful with his YouTube channel and, like, really working on his YouTube presence, plus, you know, people like Jenna Rossi and Meg Latour and, like, a lot of, like, the other big author tubers like Alexa Dunn and things like that, I have been thinking about whether it would be worth doing an upload on whether or not authors should do YouTube, especially after Daniel Green in his first reaction video was basically like, all of you authors, you should get out in front of a camera on YouTube and just, like, you know, all that stuff. And, like, I mean, I agree with Daniel's point in some ways, and I also disagree because it comes back to this thing of, like, don't copy someone's tactics, like, analyze the tactics and understand their strategy and understand why they chose that particular tactic for that strategy before you try and adapt their strategy or decide whether their strategy is going to be right for you and your goals as an author and as a business owner. Because it's like, okay, the reason Sanderson does YouTube is Sanderson initially got into YouTube because he wanted to share his lectures, right? Like, and the lectures were just kind of like, it was another point of entry for people who didn't know him to discover him, and you know, he was doing that stuff anyway, so you know, why not? And plus, like, he's a very generous guy, so it was his way of giving back to the writing community at large, in general, at scale, right? Like, it was not an extra thing that he did with the intention of selling books. Now, do his writing lectures actually sell books? Yes, I'm positive that it does, because there would be a lot of people who didn't know about him, found his writing lectures, and went, oh, hey, like, I like this guy's writing advice. It is very actionable and practical for me, and I have learned tons. And he talks about a lot of his books in class, and it's normally not the kind of thing I would read, but like the way he talks about it is very interesting, and I would like to see, you know, how like, you know, he's implemented the writing advice that he's giving me in his books. And so, you know, yeah, they go off and buy his books, and maybe like then they're like, oh, I actually really enjoy these books, and they become a Sanderson fan. So yes, of course his writing lectures sell books, right? But it's just like, is it necessary? Like, just because his writing lectures sell books doesn't mean that all authors should be on AuthorTube and doing like AuthorTube channels about writing advice and things like that. And I don't think so. And it's very hard to quantify this analysis, because obviously nobody is disclosing numbers anywhere. But like, you know, if you listen to Alexa Dunn and Jenna Morrissey talk about their YouTube channels and whether or not their YouTube channels move books, like, obviously they do. Like, Jenna, I think, has disclosed on a stream on somebody else's channel that like the vast majority of her book sales come from her YouTube channel. Like, she's upfront about that. Her YouTube channel is at this point a big part of her sales funnel. And Alexa Dunn has also been on record that she would be struggling without her YouTube channel. Like, her YouTube channel does move books for her. But like, I think, like, comparatively speaking, right, if you look at the authors who have moved a lot of copies and who are also YouTubers and what they actually do with their channel, I would bet, like, even though no numbers have necessarily been disclosed or anything, I would bet that Daniel Green, Shad M. Brooks from Shadversity, and Ziran Wang, it is Ziran Wang, right? Ziran J. Wang, I think all three of them, they're all YouTubers. They've all self-published books. Sorry, no, Ziran is not self-published. Ziran is actually traditionally published by, I forgot who her publisher was, but Ziran is traditionally published. Daniel Green and Shad self-published. All three of them, I would bet, have outsold in terms of their books the numbers that, say, someone like Jenna Morrissey and Meg Latour have, right? Like, because their channels are not about writing. Like, their channels are about an area of interest for them, and which also have a very natural overlap in terms of the kinds of stories that they write. So Daniel Green, he's a booktuber, he reviews fantasy novels, he's like the fantasy news guy, and he self-published a series of novellas which are fantasy. So over time he's developed his platform. A lot of his viewers love his channel and they're curious, so of course they went and bought the Lawful Times books. Ziran's channel went viral because of her sorry, I've misgendered Ziran. Ziran's YouTube channel blew up because Ziran had a viral Twitter thread where they were live reacting to Mulan, and that went viral. And at that point in time, I think they had already been in the process with Iron Widow, right? And because Ziran is passionate about Asian culture and all that stuff, obviously there's a huge overlap with her. I've got to stop misgendering Ziran. There's obviously a huge overlap with Ziran's audience and Iron Widow. Like, that's why Iron Widow did tremendously well. Shad, at the same time, like, he does a lot of rants about medieval times and weapons and things like that. So Shad, when he published Shadow of the Conqueror, like, he doesn't do a whole lot of videos on his channel about books and writing. Like, he's got a couple. But yeah, like, of course there was a massive overlap because people who usually like, laughing and Renaissance fairs and have an interest in medieval weapons and armor generally like fantasy novels. So like, I'm just like, I don't think I don't know, like AuthorTube is a very narrow audience, to be honest. Like AuthorTube is really for authors and writers and people who want to be authors. And so I'm just like, yes, authors are readers, but we're also a different breed of readers to general readers. And I'm just like, why, if you're going to put all that effort into doing a YouTube channel, because YouTube channels are a lot of work, why wouldn't you pick a YouTube channel where you have, you know, a broader potential viewership? Because surely that would actually be a better and more effective part if you're going to use that as a sales funnel for your books. Like, it doesn't make sense to me why you would deliberately target a niche audience where, by and large, you know, they're not necessarily interested in the books you write per se as a reader. Like they're here for other stuff. Like it doesn't make sense to me. Connor says Critical Drinker is actually a very successful author. He's co-written a book with James Patterson. He does film review mostly. Oh man, yeah, I have not looked into Critical Drinker. I will look that up afterwards. Connor also says, I'd love a full video on YouTube authors. If I can think of an interesting way to do it that is not like the, you know, hundreds of other videos out there which are basically ripping apart all the YouTube authors to shreds, I will do it. I did try to do it. I did try to outline that video a couple of times. Never got to a point where I was happy with the angle and thought it would be an interesting thing for you guys to watch. So I will think some more about it. But in the meantime, it is just past 12 o'clock noon here in Sydney, and I have really loved chatting with you guys over the last 2 and a bit hours. But I should get back to work. I have books to ship out, and so yeah, I am probably going to be late with this week's video. It is going to be a vlog video because I have literally not had time to do a deep analysis of anything else. But if you guys wanted to know what it is like to have a book launch when you are, you know, not Sanderson and you're not, you know, you don't have a small press even behind you, like you can find out in my blog. So thank you guys for joining me on this countdown. When I finish editing the vlog, which I have no when that is because I need to get to the post office and like ship out all these things before the weekend is up and the post office closes. I will put that up here somewhere on the screen. I don't even know where I am on the screen right now because this is not my normal filming setup. This is my live streaming setup, and you guys can see the train wreck. Yeah, I will be honest, this week has been like a total train wreck for me. You guys can see the train wreck. That was my book launch for my second book, which instantly I thought I was going to get better with the second one. No, like I do not necessarily get better with the second book launch. It's just doing the second book launch, it's like I know all the mistakes already, and instead of like just walking blindly into the mistake, I'm just like, hello mistake that I am about to make, and I know that I'm gonna walk straight into you, but I can't avoid you right now. I guess I'm just walking into this mistake with both eyes open this time. Yeah, that is where the state of things are at right now. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. I've had a great time counting down to the end of this Kickstarter with you guys, and thank you so much for watching this channel. And if you would like to do some writing with me, then I will be streaming again at 5:30 in the morning tomorrow Sydney time. And if you don't want to write, you can just sit and watch me like agonize over the terrible words that are coming out of my fingers onto the keyboard because I am so stuck with these revisions. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys. I will see you again next time. Bye.